Good evening and welcome to the Long Meadow Select Board Town Meeting, or Select Board Meeting of Tuesday, April 21st, 2015. We'll start with the allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to start with announcements. Does anybody have any announcements tonight?
Richard, I would just like to announce that there's some road work that's going to be planned here for the end of this week and in the coming weeks. And we'll likely be doing a Blackboard, a town-wide phone call, updating residents on some of that. Obviously, the work on Long Meadow Street has been continuing. That's a state project being managed by the State Department of Transportation.
Mm-hmm.
But we also received word today that our paving contractor is going to do some milling and overlay on Shaker Road on Friday, which is, if anybody's been down Shaker Road, you know that's sorely needed.
Yeah.
And so we have a couple other, we're updating our timeline for the spring construction season. Like I said, we'll be sending out hopefully a message this week.
Are they just going to do the bad area, Stephen? Do you know?
Just cut and patch.
Just cut and patch, okay. Okay.
Yeah, cut and patch, not mill and overlay.
Yeah, cut and
right.
patch. Any other comments? Any resident comments? Seeing none, folks, what we're going to do, we're going to immediately go into executive session tonight for a period of about 30 minutes, and then we will return and we'll have our full meeting at that time.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn to executive session with the likelihood of returning to open session, or that we will return to open session for the purposes of litigation discussion.
Second. Roll call, or all?
Yeah.
Ms.
Roll call.
Angelides?
Yes.
Mr. Gould?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Folks, we'll be back in approximately 30 minutes. Thank you. Into executive later then, right? Reconvene in executive.
If we have time.
It was a good conversation
We
we
have
had
to
on
end
the
at 8.
lights.
I don't know if we'll have time.
Why do we have to?
I don't know if we,
Why are we reconvening?
Just to talk a little bit more about that,
Just
and see if we have a kind
See if
of
we-
a better directive.
Yeah. Well,
I think we're in good shape. I mean, I'm not
Okay.
trying to, but I don't think we need to. I think we have a couple good next steps.
David, it was my understanding that you said that you were going to be ready when we were. Is that correct?
That is correct, and the microphones are on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Stephen, you about ready?
Yeah, just-
Okay. Good evening, folks, and welcome back to the April 21st, 2015 Select Board meeting. We're now back in session. We're going to move right on to Select Board comments. We have any Select Board comments tonight?
I don't know. I saw something in our packet about a letter that you had written to PVPC.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to take that up later, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be in Stephen's minutes.
Uh-huh. Cover my report. The report.
Yeah, it's in your report. Go ahead.
I had we've had car break-ins and things like that over town over the years, and I just wanted to say, I think it was Thursday or Friday, as I was backing out of my driveway, I noticed someone walking down a neighbor's driveway, and it's a house that is unoccupied, and I wasn't going to call the police, and I just said I might as well call the police because who knows, and I'd say within 3 minutes, and one of them snuck up behind me, I didn't even see or hear, there were 3 policemen on our street. making sure that the house was secure, and it actually ended up being the neighbor next door was walking down her driveway, and it looked like she was walking down, it was someone else, and, not seeing any cars on the street and thinking about it. And my only point with mentioning it, first of all, is that the response time was phenomenal. But more importantly is that if you see something, and I almost didn't make that call, and I would have regretted it if something did happen, and I just want to urge the community that if you see something that doesn't look right, and it didn't look right at that time of day, to see someone walking down the street, is to make the call. And I just wanted to, I always tell people in town, with all the bad and good that you talk about, is that we have an ambulance that can be at your house in 4 minutes and a police car even faster. And I think that's, and I know the fire department might argue that, but I think that's important to understand, that the quality of services that we deliver are phenomenal. And I can tell you that if I was living in the city of Springfield, which I did for 25 years, I don't think a cop would have been there in 3 minutes, and that's coming from a family of cops. So that's not a disrespect to them, it's just a commendment of our force here. So I just wanted to mention that.
Okay. Anyone else with comments? Mark?
Nope.
Okay. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I mentioned about the utility conversions, people getting these notices in the mail and setting up for conversion. There was significant penalties associated with them. I cautioned everybody to be very careful. It's my understanding, I believe last week there was some legislation passed that may have actually stopped that practice. But before you proceed, I would still do some research. I didn't research all the legislation, but it looks like our Boston has enacted something to stop that. Not illegal procedure, but just these crazy fines with people converting over. The town manager evaluation, I want to remind everybody on the board, town manager evaluation is due 5/1, and we're going to be doing his evaluation at our May 4th meeting. Debbie will send out, if the board wants, she'll send out all of the town manager meetings, the notes he gives us. There's 1 or 2 sheets if you want it for reference in your evaluation. Would everybody?
Town manager reports.
Yeah, the town manager reports. Would everybody like this?
Yeah,
Sure.
Okay.
Fine.
You don't have to send it if you don't want them.
When you sent out an email, said we delivered COB, what does that mean?
COB?
In your email to us about the reports, to be delivered COB?
Close of business.
Oh, yeah,
Close of business, there you go, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
On this report?
No, there's one of your, no.
Oh,
your
yeah,
emails,
that's
you
close of
sent-
business, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I
Yeah,
didn't know if I
close
was
of
missing
business.
something there.
Yeah, I just hung up from the old times. A couple weeks ago, I mentioned about the our tax rate, the max tax rate, and I've been talking about the elements starting to climb up on us. And what I've done now, I've set up, and I'll send it on an email tomorrow. We've got setting up a forum on March 5th to meet in this room and have some of our pivotal committee members
You
there.
don't mean March 5th.
No, excuse me, May 5th.
Okay.
I'm wanting to slide back. That's what happens when you get older, you want to keep sliding back. On May 5th, to enter into a more fruitful discussion from our CFO and possibly even from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission on some of the things that lay before us and start to get some ideas generated. I would imagine the end result of that will possibly be some type of task force that's put together that carries this effort even a little bit further down the road.
Can I say, do you intend that to be, I mean, I can't make it that night because
Yeah.
I'm already scheduled for something. Is that something where you anticipate it being a select board meeting or just a public forum?
No, just a forum.
Okay.
And we can all be there, or we can not be there, but it's pursuance of some of the other goals that we had on the select board and to keep this effort going forward. The CFO has some concerns about it, and I'm sure Paul's going to put together a pretty good program to share with us and to share with the open community on this. And I'll be sending out something tomorrow to some of the pivotal committee members to try to get some representation at that meeting. That's all I have. Anybody else have anything? Okay, get some motions up for approval of minutes. We've got March 2nd. Mark, what are you going to go for?
I move to approve the March 2nd, 2015 regular meeting minutes.
Excuse me, what?
My town manager's report, I can go after the minutes, get approved.
I'm sorry, Stephen. I'm sorry.
I withdraw my motion.
Yeah,
There you go.
withdraw the motion. I overlooked you, Stephen. Okay, town manager's report. Yeah, I know, that brings tears. I can see the tears.
I guess I'll start with the segue. Included in the report is a letter that went out over Richard's signature with a request for DLTA. As I note in my report, Direct Local Technical Assistance is a service that the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission provides to its member communities. And the request for the assistance has to go out over the signature of the chief elected official. But truthfully, as something I've kind of pushed as the director of planning for the community, in that we've talked at various times, I know I've reported at various times, that the 2004 Long Meadow Long Range Plan probably needs to be looked at again, and we've talked about different parcels of land, certain, the water tower property's been something we've talked about in the past. We went through the process of feasibility study for different sites for a senior center. We're about to start that process for a DPW facility. There really isn't a lot of developable land in the community as it is. And then you add this additional element of the tax rate limit. And all these pieces kind of came home for me to say, we really need to focus on this sooner rather than later, so the long-range plan can reflect where we're going with some of these project ideas and trying to generate some growth to help avoid some very negative consequences from hitting our tax rate cap. So while all this is kind of spinning in my head, I get the email from PVPC looking for requests for this DLTA, and it kind of said, well, it only takes a letter to get them to agree to help us to do this, and I did confirm that updating a master plan is an eligible expense for DLTA, and I thought, well, that's kind of convenient. So that kind of prompted my interest in getting this going, and of course I asked Richard as the chair if he would sign the letter, and he agreed to, and that prompted a larger conversation with him and I about getting some community stakeholders involved. We haven't heard from Pioneer Valley if we've been approved the DLTA, but I think beginning a community discussion about this is an important thing. So that was really the genesis of that. It's really another movement forward in the conversations that we had in the past about not only our tax rate, but the projects we have and where things can go. So,
Can I,
sure.
yeah, are you moving on to something
No,
else?
go ahead. I was, but yeah. you
Okay,
can go.
so, I must say, when I saw that letter, I was very surprised. This is a major development. The end of the letter, it says, therefore, it is imperative to plan for new growth now. Struck me that, that ought to be a discussion for the select board as a whole to make, to decide that really is imperative to plan for new growth now, before we set that in motion. I'm not sure in my 2 years on the board, I've seen something as significant go out like this over the signature of one person on the board, without the select board having seen it. It seems to be, we could have a letter go out on the behalf of some other member of the select board saying it is not imperative to plan for new growth now. That's why, we need to discuss it first. To me, before you set that process in motion, we should have that discussion. New growth, there's a lot of upsides and downsides to it. If we're talking about reducing, green space and parkland and recreation space, it may not be imperative to have new growth. So I'm really, I was quite surprised by that.
I hear what you're saying, Alex. I think because this is something I feel that has been raised several times in select board conversations, it's something that was kind of in our active consciousness. When the board went through at the beginning of Richard's term as chair, the goal-setting session and kind of counting up what the goals were, updating the master plan / strategic plan / land use planning were all, I think, fairly highly ranked in terms of goals that the board collectively had in its list of things that we were looking to do. So I guess I didn't look at it as that great a leap of logic because it has been discussed so many times, and in the board's own goal setting, it was a highly ranked goal, and truthfully, it was, the request went out, and I wanted to get our request in early, but I didn't think it was really that big a stretch.
So, I mean, having that, I mean, are we, I mean, I guess I'll direct this to Richard. I mean, are we ever going to discuss whether it's imperative to plan for new growth now,
I thought
or
we,
is that the last word?
I thought we already had discussed it when we established our goals for this year. There's at least 4 of the items that are covered under this proposal. Matter of fact, there's likely more. Is develop water tower property was a goal, generate new income, manage the tax rate, planning the development, and master planning. There was at least 4 things that are right where we're at this point, Alex, that fit under this type of study, this type of moving forward.
I mean, but we've never decided that it's imperative to plan for new growth now.
Well-
I mean, I don't think we've ever,
Well,
Voted-
do you not
voted
want-
that.
Do you not want to plan for growth? I don't understand what your point is. We are going to hit our tax limit in anywhere from 5 to 6 years from now without doing anything. Do you want to just let us run into the tax limit?
well, I mean, that's what, I guess what I'm saying is, that's what we should be deciding as a group, not the letter.
Do you want us to hit tax? I have to take a little bit of leadership role here, and that we had the goals, and I'm moving us forward as I thought we had predetermined.
Richard?
Yeah.
I think what it is that you're setting up the possibility for us to be able to discuss this. Whether you're talking about that May 5th meeting where we're going to get the information, and then with the planners coming in, I mean, nothing's going to happen until this board takes a vote and takes the next step. But to have the information in front of us to see what the possibilities are, I don't think that is outside the range, especially since we've all agreed these are things we have to look at. So I consider it informational gathering
Well, this
still at
is
this
just
point.
a start. I mean,
Yeah.
This is just a very brief start. There'll be a lot of steps to this after this process.
If I may.
Yeah.
But I think this goes beyond just, saying, or it goes far beyond, I think, just saying we want to take a look at what we want to do. Because first of all, I don't know if anybody on this board has discussed the long-range plan and whether or not that's something we actually want to redevelop and so forth, because one of the things it called for was the installation of, or building of market garden apartments on the fields at Wolf Swamp. That's one of the aspects of the long-range plan. It was developed in 2004, and I think the first consideration is whether or not that's something that we actually even want to put down as a benchmark of what we want to discuss in the future. And quite frankly, if someone puts down in the goals, as one of the things they want to see as a goal, as one of the board member puts down, develop the water tower property, I don't believe that is actually a goal of the select board. It could have been a goal of a member of the select board or 2 members of the select board. But we didn't vote on that and say that is a goal and that's something we want to talk about. I think there should have been a discussion prior to this going out, because I think the basis of this report, if you want to start talking about tax rates, and there's a lot of things that go into the tax rate, including property valuations, and if property valuations go up, then it helps reduce the time in which you hit your levy limit and so forth. But if we wanted to talk about what a basis was for, something developing in the future, I don't think the long-range plan is it. I think the long-range plan was developed, and I think the first words of the long-range plan of Long Meadow likes being Long Meadow. And that's the basis of why there's not a lot of things that were actionable in there, I think, for the town at the time. And I don't know if that's going to be the basis of PVPC coming in and saying, okay, we're going to look at the law, because I think that's what the letter's asking. But I would have liked to have seen some sort of discussion before this went out about what we specifically are looking to get out of this. And if this is just the first step, I can live with that, as long as I understand what's going to come out of it and this board has some input about what we want to see come out of it.
Okay, well, just a point of record, this board has had this study, the 2004 study, since 2004, and they've done nothing with it, except for some very minor little things. But it's not been a major issue of talk. As far back as 2013, I corresponded with the chair of the select board over my same feelings that I have now, that we have to be looking to somehow avoid what is coming down the road. And at this point, without some sort of intervention, there is nothing that will stop the inevitable bump up against the limit on our tax rate. Now, you mentioned property valuations going up. That's fine, they go up. That bumps it back, but it also charges our residents more tax dollars. One offsets the other, so it's a nasty puzzle whichever way you look at it. But one thing is inevitable. We pay the highest property tax rate of any city in the Commonwealth. We're at, I think, $23.70, and about $1.70 or $1.90 of that is debt exclusion. So I think we're paying $21.90, and our cap is $25. And I did a normal 2.5% escalator with no growth and without any new things. And we don't have a lot of new development taking place. And it looked like somewhere between 5 and 7 years. And the CFO is substantially in agreement with this. And Paul said he has brought this issue up before, and it's not been able to get traction. And I felt it needs to get traction, and it was echoed in so many places on our goals, including one of your top goals was managed tax rate, and this falls right into hopefully managing our tax rate so we can start to put a handle on it and plan for the future, or we can blindly run into that wall.
I'm not going to argue with you about managing the tax rate, because I think we should, but a lot of managing the tax rate has nothing to do with the long-range plan, and I think that's where maybe some of the confusion is coming from, that I think those two things are separate. They can be somewhat working, a long-range plan about establishing new growth is great, but that's not necessarily managing the tax rate. And managing the tax rate is talking about, and we've had chances to do it, and we've spent up to the levy limit each and every year. So, and quite frankly, I would challenge Mr. Prasturzik to tell me when he's brought up over the last 9 years the ability to manage the tax rate, and I don't remember that conversation, and I'd like him to point it out to me, because I may have missed something very important.
I'm not saying that he stood here and screamed here. He said there has been conversations of it. And you could say for the record, you're right. This board has pretty consistently taken the full 2.5%. As far as I know, there's only one time since 1987 has this board not approved a full 2.5% against the community. And a lot of board members here have been here for several years, so this has been taking place on our watch. And it's going to stop. It has to stop. It can't continue. It's inevitable. Something's got to break, and unless somebody gives us about 20 and 50,000 acres of land that we can start developing, our tax base is what you see in this community right now, and it's not going to grow bigger without some minor improvements. There's some little pieces, but it's time that we get somebody at this table that has a professional background to give us the guidance as a select board so we can make the right decisions. And I haven't seen it being given to us at this point. I mean, we've not had this discussion in the last 3 years, and that's 3 more years closer to hitting the tax limit. So I just think it's time the discussion hits. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I wanted to make a few comments. The first one is that in terms of the letter, Richard, I think there's a semantics concern. I have a semantics concern. Clearly, if I was writing the letter, I would have used different words than you did, and I think other people might have also. I think this imperative to plan for new growth, I think the intent, and I hope the intent is, it's imperative that we plan to get additional income so that our tax rates are under control, and that we can handle the expenditures that the town needs to make to continue to renew our facilities, whether it be a DPW or schools or even an adult center. And so I think, as I said, I would have written a different letter. I'm not quite sure I agree with every word that's here, but if the intent is to bring in the PVPC to help us take a look at things, I'm not going to go to the wall over semantics and over wording. But I would like to make some comments about the tax rate. And everybody says we have the highest tax rate in the Commonwealth, and clearly we do. That there's no debate about that. I think it was 3 weeks ago the Division of Local Services sent out an email. I have that printed out. I keep it with me all the time, and it lists the tax rates by town. Ours is the highest, but ours is not the highest tax on single-family residential homes, not by a long shot.
The tax rate is.
The rate is, but not the actual tax people pay.
Two different things.
The rate is simply a quotient. It's the money you raise divided by the value of the properties. That's all that is. And the state put an arbitrary limit, I think, of $25 on it many, many years ago. And every time we've come close to $25 in the past, as people have indicated, there's been a revaluation of properties, and so the denominator of the quotient changes and the tax rate changes. But if you go to many, many towns in the eastern part of the state, a few towns in Pittsfield, in Berkshire County, the average tax rate is far higher. So that doesn't excuse the fact that we have a tax rate.
You're saying two things are wrong. You're
No.
saying the average tax rate,
The average tax, the average tax bill.
That they
I
pay,
apologize.
right. The tax
average
rate,
tax
we're the
bill
highest.
is
Okay.
the average tax bill is higher, and I think people who live here realize that when they compare Longmeadow to Newton or Wellesley or other towns in the eastern part of the state and some in the western part of the state, the average tax bill is lower. And so, yes, I'm concerned. I think there's a lot going on, but I think that it's not a time to panic. It's a time to take some action. I also think that our concern that we need to take some action and do something about our tax rate is important to do, but it shouldn't overwhelm the actions that we have to do. Clearly, I think that we'd identified some other areas in terms of development and bringing in additional income that will stave off or defer this limit. Yes, we have a tax rate that we've been using 2.5% each year for the last many years, but part of that is we've got a town that has, 80% of our town expenses have to do with salaries and personnel benefits, and those costs go up by 2 and 2.5% a year because our employees do a good job and they expect living wages and wages that keep up with inflation and the cost of living. And it's very, very, as I've said many times, we don't buy enough pencils to stop buying supplies to make up the difference if we want to pay our employees. And so, to some degree, this theoretical or artificial cap of 2.5%, and I think I said it again this year, was set as a maximum for states through Prop 2.5, has for the town of Longmeadow turned into a minimum. We seem every year to go that level, and every time we think we're below that level, there's a, pardon the expression, a money grab that says, where can we use the money for some department or another, or between the different budgeting sections of town. So although I see this as a viable, valuable activity, I don't see it as a crisis. I really don't. I don't think that, I'm not panicked. I think that we will continue to manage our tax rate, we will manage our tax bills, and we'll manage our tax property. I support doing this, but as I said earlier, I think the wording is something I would have done differently, and certainly I would have felt better as a member of the select board that we were working uniformly and working together if I had known this was going to go out before it went out on my name, because it was sent out on select board stationery, and I have been called on the carpet many more
It
times.
was sent on town
Town
manager's
manager.
secretary.
Doesn't say.
Says Town of Longmeadow.
Yeah,
Okay,
town
so
manager.
anyway, it seems to me that
No, it says
since
select board on it.
Yeah, but that's not our select board.
fine. I would have felt more comfortable if we had known it was going out before it went out. That's all. I'm not saying I would have told you to stop it. I wouldn't told you to change it necessarily, but I would have felt more comfortable that we were working as a team had I known it was going out.
Right.
Excuse me.
Richard, I'm just glad we're starting to take a step. I think that this is long overdue. I think that this board has all been circling the issue. If we had to take 2 more meetings to discuss the wording of the letter, we wouldn't have been able to be in the front of the line like the town manager is recommending. And I think that we've heard from the residents, that the residents want us to start planning. We want long-term planning. This is the first step towards it. Now, when you say it's not a crisis now, but I think everyone on this board has expressed serious concern over all the years I've been on the board on what's going on with the tax rate, what is happening to our residents, plus what we still have coming in the future. Whether it's we're still paying for the new high school, we're now talking about SOIs for the middle school, we're talking about a new senior center, we're talking about DPW, and yet we have this difficult issue of how we're paying for our actual services every year. So I think it's about time that we all sit down. This meeting he's describing on the 5th, is fabulous. We describe where are we and where are we going. And nothing is being taken from the hands of the select board. We are getting information, and we will be getting more information from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission without cost to the town, so that we can start making these decisions. And some of them will be easy, and some of them are going to be difficult, but that's why we get the big bucks, because we have to make these difficult decisions. And the more information that's brought to us, the better. So we might have jumped over and we didn't get to micromanage what was in this letter. I'm glad that we're finally sitting down and we're going to do this. Now, you say it's not a crisis. Well, I think when we all look at the distance and we look 10 years out, and we're always saying we should be up there at 30,000 feet, and that's what you've been teaching me, then we do start to get worried, because we're not going to be able to afford these salaries. With the promises we're making now, we're not going to be able to afford in 20 years. So what is town going to look like? Now, MMA, it was a lovely talk in the beginning, and this guy said, don't look at today, look at the future and what the future could bring. And he had all of this high-tech stuff, and it was fascinating. This will be the first step for us to look at the long-term range planning, and then maybe decide in 20 years, where do we think we might be? So it will be a very interesting, fruitful discussion, and maybe we won't come up to decisions, but maybe it will also help us form goals, because this board's been having trouble forming goals. So I think the next few meetings, and what Pioneer Valley Planning Commission will come back to us, will be very interesting and very helpful to us as a board. And when it comes to a 2004 master plan, shame on us that we have not looked at it, because that's the whole idea of long-term planning, is you take the 2004 and you change it and you change it, and we should have been going back and looking at every 2 years and making it a living document instead of something that's sitting on the dust, sitting on the shelf. So we're finally picking it up, we're scraping it off, and sure, there might be a lot of crazy stuff in there because it's from 2004, but I think it's the beginning of an important conversation. So Richard, I'm sure we would have all wordsmithed it a different way, but I appreciate that you took the step forward.
It's only one. Go ahead, Alex.
So, okay, so now we're talking about this, which is good. I mean, I've got a lot of concerns about new growth, because we look at new growth as sort of this, unconditional addition to town revenues.
Mm-hmm.
The fact is, a lot of growth can actually have a net negative effect on the budget. Now, we just don't think about that, because, for example, in the Washington, D.C. area where I used to live and Richard, you used to live, there are certain, developments of fairly inexpensive townhomes that actually cost the town much more than what they get from the tax rate. I mean, that's something that, so you could be exacerbating the very problem that you're identifying. The other thing about new growth is that you open yourself up, you open up land to new growth. We are under the 10% affordable housing limit. So what that means is that you open up land, a developer can come in, and as long as it's, low-income housing, we can have unplanned developments and developments that are against our zoning laws. And the more fundamental concern I've got with new growth is it changes the character, or at least it can change the character of the town. I mean, you go over to East Long Meadow. East Long Meadow is a great town. It looks very different. There are lots of strip malls. It's a less residential place. You go to Northampton, it looks very different. And part of the appeal of Long Meadow is the residential character of it, that it's not crowded, that we don't have too much commercial, we don't have too much traffic on our roads. And again, what could end up happening is you change the character of the town, you make it a less aesthetically pleasing place to live, a less enjoyable place to live. You've diminished property values across the board, which again could diminish, which could exacerbate the very problem that you're talking about. And then I guess the final point that I would make is that this 2004 plan that, as Paul pointed out, involves, or at least contemplates, apartments on the Wolf Swamp Fields.
Mhm.
I'm against that,
Good.
100%.
Good.
I mean, we hear all the time, we do not have enough fields. We do not have enough. And we're going to build upon that. I think that's very short-sighted, especially for something that actually could have a net negative effect on our budget.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, this is the sort of,
This is fear mongering. We haven't even, these plans are not in front of us now. No one's talking about building on the Wolf Swamp Fields. I mean,
Well, you
we're
referred to the-
talking about- No, we're
the
talking about
range.
bringing
I
the
mean-
plan and making it a current document, which we will all have input in. But to say, oh, there's 10 reasons I'm against all growth, let's have the discussion when the actual issues are in front of us. We're only talking about discussing it. If we are so afraid of even discussing what the future of Long Meadow is, then I don't think we belong on this board. And to say that, oh, if we talk about the long-range plan, then we're talking about building low-income housing on Wolf Swamp Fields, so everyone should be terrified. We're now going to become an industrial East Longmeadow. We're just talking about now discussing planning, having some meetings on it. Then you can say, when we decide we want to build on something, why you are against it. But to say you're against even discussing it is
Well, I mean,
extremely... It's just saying, I don't want to do any long-term planning. I don't
No,
want to
that's-
look at any
that's-
possibilities. I don't want to discuss anything because any growth is horrible to our town. Let's actually have the issues in front of us, and then we can start saying no to them. Then the no people can come out and say no to it. But we don't even have anything in front of us yet
Well,
to argue.
I mean, I never said anything about planning. I've been talking about planning projects and putting everything on the table together. I've been talking about
Then
that
why
for
are
2
you
years.
arguing against doing this?
No. This is a very specific thing. It says it is imperative to plan for new growth. New growth means developing
So you're against the
land.
letter. You're against the letter,
I-
but you're not against planning.
Absolutely.
Okay,
That's
good. So then
exactly
we're
right.
moving forward. Richard, be careful next
Do
time
you
we want to
realize that new
wordsmith.
growth is me renovating my home?
No, I get that.
That's new growth.
But
That's
I
not
think,
bad. And by the way, I didn't live where there was cheap condos in Virginia.
I know, Loudon County is a whole
Hey, I
different
was-
story, but there were Prince George's County
Unless you
and
call
some other
$800,000
places,
condos cheap,
That's
so,
right. That's
anyway.
right. There are some places that haven't.
We can fearmonger all we want. We don't have anything before us. I think if we just looked at the facts that are before us, we know what our rate is right now, and we know where it's going if we don't do something about it. There's very few ways to do something about that rate. We do know that our equalized evaluation has gone down in this community since 2006. And we do know that East Longmeadow has grown since 2006. I think we've gone down about 3%. I believe they've gone up 4%. Every chart you look at does not show a rosy picture at the end of the road. It tells you, folks, you better start to think what's happening and start to put some corrective measures, and whatever it be. Maybe we hit the limit and we say, okay, we're stopped, now we start laying off people and cutting services. Because I guarantee you, when we hit it, that's the only choice you have. You can no longer get any more tax revenue unless you get an exceptional year of growth and you keep it right at 25 and you pick up 50,000, whatever it is. But that curve, to me, is going to be scary, because you talk about property values, you start chasing people, you let us hit the levy, or let us hit the full tax limit and see how many people are jumping to move to Longmeadow. If we just sit here and twiddle our thumbs and allow it to happen. That's all we're trying to do, is get ahead of it. Go ahead, Paul.
Two things. I'd like to request, since I'm not going to be here on the 5th, and I'm assuming that this is a public forum
Right.
being sponsored by the Select Board, that we have Mr. Pasturza come in on the 4th of our regular scheduled meeting to present to the Select Board what he would be discussing in the forum. I think if we're going to start talking about things like tax rate, I would rather see that discussion here before it becomes public. And, I set aside my Monday nights and I can't make it on that night because of work. So I would like to at least understand what he's going to be presenting to the public. And the second point I will make is this, is that we just went through a budget process, and if you really want to start talking about managing tax rates, that's where you do it. And I didn't see the appetite for it. In fact, making a simple thing like a little cut somewhere in the budget was met with very much resistance. And I think it's a good thing to start talking about the tax rate and what we're going to be facing, because there's not Richard, you hit it on the head. There's not a lot of alternatives, and I agree with you on that. So I think it's a good thing. But if the CFO is going to be presenting to the public And this is a topic that's kind of related to this letter with the long-range plan and so forth. I would just like to ask that it be presented to the board so we know what's going to be said to the public at our behest, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm right.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be in a packet. We can receive the written material, but to have it presented twice.
Well, Paul can
Seems-
show the slides if he has some slides made up. I think he's going to have some general information. I think the thing is, it just starts the discussion, that's all it's going to do. And this will go on.
We're not gonna be discussing it
I don't
on
disagree with
Tuesday,
you, but
are
I
we?
think if we're going to start a discussion with the public, the board should be aware of what the discussion's
Yeah,
going to be.
well, yeah, okay, well, we can do, we've already had a discussion with the public tonight, so they should very much be aware of what's coming. I can't figure many factors going to come out on the table that haven't already been spilled out tonight. But he'll bring them in, no problem, is there?
I don't think so.
Yeah, because at this point, you're not absolutely sure you can even get Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
No, I have not heard back. I mentioned it was free, right?
Yes, you did.
Just the assistance is free?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Actually, I don't think you did, but.
Yeah, we're ready to move on to another
yeah,
question.
I think.
Stephen, another thing in your town manager's report was the DPW task force, quite an august group, I would say, I don't know, 15 names or august group. I guess the question is, where do you see this task force starting? Obviously, they're starting and ending at some point. You know what? I perceive that this is kind of a response to, or the discussion we had earlier about town building committees, that and there is no town building standing committee, so this will serve for the DPW task force. But to whom are these people answerable, and how are they become answerable to the town should we continue to move forward with the DPW facility, which I hope we do?
I'd say they're answerable to me, and I have just kind of some goals, and some agenda items, some kind of generic framework of how I view the task force operating. It's in draft form right now, but I do want to have some level of structure to it. I mean, the folks that are on this are really, here either because they serve on a committee that could possibly have a role, aside from select board, that could possibly have a role, like the planning board and the finance committee, in weighing in on this project in the future. And the other ones are, architects, engineers, a member of the school building committee who's gone through a large building project, understands kind of what that's like. You're right, it's a great group, broad, diverse experience. Everyone has said yes, and which I'm pleased with. And I think that the big thing, the main goal is to really, it's goal 1 and 1A is, as I say here, give us their input on how they think the project should evolve, and also help generate community support for the project as it evolves. This group, if we work well together, could be the Lancer Pride for a new DPW facility. And they all, in my initial conversation, they all understood that was a part of the role, was to make sure that it's to generate, they all understand the issues with the DPW and want to help us move forward. So it really is just an advisory group. I know that the task force you served on, Mark, for the siting originally,
That's long gone.
long gone, but that was the same type of thing. It was just a task force answerable to Robin, and when Robin got your report, she presented it to the board, and I view it being similar to that, in fact. That's actually, to be honest, that's the model for this.
Thank you.
go ahead, Maureen.
I have a lot of comments on town manager reports. Was there more you wanted to report? And then I can make my comments, or?
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. First of all, I want to say, everyone should read these. They're fascinating. I think you've done a wonderful job giving us a real picture of what's going on, and there's so much that's going on. The building department and the information on the Young Mansion and the work that you're really doing on that and keeping an eye on that is wonderful. I also like the way you've broken DPW into maintenance, where the projects, and you say what has happened so far in the project, or even if there's no action in the project. And I think that would be a great model to take when we start to report back to capital planning numerous times during the year. So they just sort of have a photograph of what's going on with the capital projects, and we are able to see that.
good catch on an invoice that we were being charged $6,800 with the work not being done. I mean, things like that, I just are fabulous with each of the departments. You also talked about the GFOA budget being done, which is a tremendous amount of work. You said that we had to create goals. Did you create some goals with us, or was it?
Mhm.
So that was worked out. If I could see what those are, that would be interesting for us to work.
A future
for the
agenda
future
item, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, I forget which department, I think it was the town clerk's department, said the high cost of the mandate of this ethics exam we all had to take. You know, maybe we should try to get the departments to give you a list and what they estimated the cost of these things are, because I know that the auditor's office is willing to turn around and reimburse towns if they feel some of these mandates are expensive. And she seemed to really say that was a high cost. Found it fascinating, the assessor is checking out the MLSs to see who's doing renovations on the house. And everyone, if you get a renovation, you're supposed to get a permit, and they're tracking you down now. Question on finalizing the pilot with Bay Path College. Is that coming up soon? Because I thought it was done, so we're still in the final stages with that?
We met with Bay Path, went over some terms and conditions that we had some concerns with based on, it was Paul Pasturzik who really provided the historical memory
Yeah.
on that. And we talked about Bay Path, and it's kind of back on their end, and they're working through some stuff.
So it should be soon? Yeah.
You know, Bay Path obviously has a lot going on. They're a big institution, but it hasn't sat on our desks for very long. You know, and it's a voluntary agreement, so you can't really compel them.
But they're still paying on it. It
Yeah,
just hasn't been finalized.
they've been doing certain
Mhm.
things that they were on sort of the terms of the agreement. But no, we're waiting to hear back from them on certain things. And of course, as soon as we have something, we'll present it to the board.
And the rental registration, I guess that's already begun because they said the income is higher than they expected on that. Or am I misreading that report?
The what?
The rental registration, rentals?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know that we really are, one of the things I'm thinking about doing, and it may be an offshoot from the planning process, is getting together with realtors and kind of doing a workshop or a summit or some kind of get together with local realtors to talk about our vacant and foreclosed property registration, our rental property registration, kind of a bylaw refresher. It may be, like I said, it may be in the context to have them talk to us about what they see as valuable ways to sustain our assessed value, because as Mark noted, the tax rate's a derivative of your budget divided by the assessed value of the property. And the reason, you know, if you have a large drop in your assessed value, that's what drives the tax rate up. And so, you know, realtors really are with buyers every day. And so they may understand better than others what the pressure points are for buyers and what they want to see. And to Alex's point, you know, is there a tipping point you could possibly hit with development? So that's kind of a hatchling idea I have. So, you know, we haven't been, right now we're trying to figure out where are all the rentals. Right now we don't know where they all are, and that's kind of, and that's the other thing to talk to realtors, to find out, you know, we're gonna Google Craigslist and the other advertising places and see if we can find addresses where there are rentals to kind of track these down, right? And we have no master list already.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great idea, getting together with the realtors. The other thing, April Food for Fines, the library, every time I go to read the letter, they're always doing something fabulous and interesting in the community. I didn't realize we have a Facebook, and that's up and going with the new website, so I guess we should be all going on and liking it. But especially I want to acknowledge the Veterans Service Department. What they're doing this year, this month especially, is fabulous. To see that he's going outside the community, we're having a free meal at the dining room for the veterans, and that's the first time I've seen that, and they're showing the documentary and the film, and a veteran from the Battle of the Bulge is going to be speaking. The Purple Heart Proclamation, he's been going out of the area and really representing the town well, having a special ceremony for the our Medal of Honor, and I just think he's doing a fabulous job. And so I enjoy reading these reports because we see the new things that are happening in the department. So I want to thank you because I think these reports have improved and are fascinating. I do have one question that was not in the reports. Whatever happened with the innovative grant, community innovation grant?
It was a 9C cut.
Oh, it was a nice, so we did, it's
It
not
was
there
funded.
anymore.
We never found out if we get approved, and they cut the program.
Oh, that's too
At the end
bad.
of the Patrick administration.
Okay.
I did want to make, and I'm sorry to extend this conversation,
Mhm.
but I did want to make you mentioned the Young Mansion. I know
Mhm.
a lot of folks in town have concern about that.
Is that in the packet?
Under the
It's in
the
Paul
building
Healy's
department.
report.
Building
Mhm.
department, okay, I didn't.
Our building commissioner and I have been in contact with the realtor who's working with the bank to kind of manage the property. There are folks still living in it. I don't want to get too detailed because I think some of this is tied up in court. But we have been in touch with them. We stay in regular touch with the representatives of the bank. We were both there on the day the structural engineer was there and issued the report about the supports that were constructed. The structural engineer did not feel like it was an imminent safety hazard, which was a relief. It doesn't, certainly, it looks like it is, but it was a relief to hear the structural engineer kind of say, well, it's not as bad as it looks yet. There's not much the town can really do in terms of moving that forward while it's tied up in court. So what we've been doing is having some conversations internally about what could we do once the court adjudication process is all said and done, and make sure that from that day forward, things move as fast as possible. And, I don't want to get into too many specifics because there's nothing really set yet, but if there's something we can do, we're preparing to do it, to make sure that property either gets sold quickly or, either incentivize or compel the bank to make improvements, but right now, there's good dialogue with the bank and the town. So I know it doesn't look like much, but we, like I said, we're ready to be a part of solutions going forward.
Any other comments?
On that, Stephen, you referenced litigation. Who's involved in litigation?
Between the bank and the occupants.
Okay. Now, because in the report you talk about a chicken coop? I mean,
That's not part of that. Is that, I mean.
No, that's another property.
oh, okay. it
He
was-
just listed everything.
Oh, oh, okay. It was all one paragraph, so
Yeah.
I guess I assumed.
It's Paul Healy's stream of consciousness reporting.
Okay, all right.
There
He
are
had
no
to go
chicken
look up
coops
whether or
in
not,
Young Mansion.
whether or not chicken coops were allowed, and it was, I believe on Ardsley Road that someone wanted to install a chicken coop.
Okay.
And what's the word?
Yeah,
I
can
believe
get
it's a
one?
no.
Oh.
I believe it's a no.
Oh,
You have to buy your eggs at the big well.
yeah, I gotta keep buying eggs a big whack. Take the lumber back.
Mhm.
So sorry to take up so much time, but it was a great report and, as I said, full of interesting facts.
Thanks.
You have anything? Alex, you have any
Nope.
comments?
Nope.
Any other comments about town manager's report? Okay, thank you, Stephen. Now we can get to the minutes.
I move we approve the March 2nd, 2015 minutes of the select board.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Move we approve the March 9th, 2015 minutes of the Long Meadow Select Board.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Move we approve the March 11th minutes of the Long Meadows Budget Forum.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm
Move we-
abstaining, just
Okay.
because I wasn't there for the forum.
Budget form.
311. And I move we approve the March 16th regular meeting of Select Board minutes.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The other minutes we didn't get, as far as I know. I didn't see.
I didn't double check for the back because I know you used to do such a thorough job on that.
We didn't, I haven't seen those minutes yet.
Okay.
That's a record.
Yeah, so the 18th,
And the 6th weren't distributed yet.
okay.
Okay.
Anything since they weren't in the packet?
Nothing, I saw.
Yeah, mine stops at the 16th too.
And it's the second time we're seeing these minutes, that's why it went so quickly.
Yeah, all right.
Well, I think she's got the minutes, we just didn't get them in the pack. so.
Okay.
Okay. I'll double check.
Okay, 2 holdovers from next. Okay, the board directives discussion. Stephen, you wanted to have then?
I just wanted to kind of, just put it, not really for conversation, but just to put it out there. And just kind of put a framework around, some of the next two items on the agenda were really driven by, well, the second one wasn't. First one, one board member was interested in information on it, and we spent a substantial amount of staff time kind of preparing all the information to keep it as an agenda item. And on the other item, it was a board vote, but the deadline got advanced substantially, really on short notice. And both things, I think we felt were worth doing. They were good questions. It got us to codify the information we already had at our hands, and in the case of lease versus buys, we'll talk about it. We learned some new things. So they were all worth doing. I think I just put it out there as just concerned that if there's, with the amount of time these things take, it would be, I think, helpful to understand that is there consensus that these are things that we want to spend town resources on, exploring, or if it's, just a individual request. And the only reason I raise that is not because select board members individually can ask for information. No problem with that. I think there's just more efficient ways to get information than going through and putting reports in packets and things like that. Certainly, we can set up offline meetings to talk if select board members want to, set a meeting with me and the department head and kind of hash things out and learn kind of through dialogue. We can do that. We don't need to change anything. I just pointed out there that, especially on the lease versus buy, the deadline was originally sometime before we order the truck, and then it was before town meeting, and then it was I want it at the next meeting, and so the analysis we got wasn't really the depth that I wanted to get to, but it was, like I said, we still got a lot of good information out of it. I just, like I said, some more consistency in how the requests are made, so we're not just kind of chasing down things that aren't really going to have an impact going forward as much as possible. That's all.
Any comments?
Yeah, the next item for discussion, which is the opiate abuse discussion, was requested by a board member to put it on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, and I guess, well, at that meeting, we had, I think, 6 items brought up. At our
no, I
last
understand, but I
meeting.
mean,
Yeah.
it was asked to be put on the agenda, and
Right.
you put it on the agenda, so.
Yeah, well, I think the discussion, and I even had somewhat of a discussion with Stephen on this too. I even stopped and wondered too, that sometimes we have issues that are thrown out for red meat or whatever, and I don't know if the board wants the research done to bring them back as a board issue. And I don't know if we'd ever get to the point of taking a board vote, but, we could. If we started getting these lengthy types of things that take
Yeah.
a lot of workup time, then maybe the board needs to weigh in. I don't remember if they, it seemed like they did that a little bit more when they gave requests to Robin. It seems like I recall there was more consensus on the board, yes, Robin, go ahead and work this issue out.
Just before you start, Mark, it was, a board member requested it as an agenda item, but then the series of questions that we researched to answer were sent after the fact, which kind of speaks to what I'm saying, but it was, and like I said, it was a good exercise. We learned a lot by doing it, so I'm not saying let's not research questions or answer questions. What I'm saying is there, I start to have concerns about efficiency and, the other work that our workforce is supposed to be doing day in and day out, and I just raise it as an area of concern, because I don't want to, not be able to deliver the services as well as the information. And so I'm raising it now as kind of a thought bubble. Yeah, I have some concerns about it. We were able to get this done fine, but I just want to make sure there's some, like I said, some consistency with it.
And Paul's point's well taken, that I actually put it on the agenda, and it likely by...
No, that's not, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
the observation that's on
Yeah,
there, so it was
yeah.
meant to. And the only other question I would have is that if the select board member asked for the information, is it just a difference of it wouldn't be ready by this time, or it would be more of a direct dialogue? I mean, I don't disagree with the topic being discussed, but I guess I'm, especially with the lease versus buy, the budget was voted on 6 weeks ago or so, somewhere around there, a little bit longer.
Seems like that.
5 weeks or so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, but I mean, I guess my question is, or my thought is that if you just said if a select board member could ask a question, we'll get them the information, what's the difference between that and having it on the agenda and having the reports done? Because I would assume that the same information would have went into the reports back to the select board member that is being presented this evening, I would imagine. And I don't,
Can I address that
Yeah.
one? In the case, and this is, I hate to have you use any case, but in the case of what Alex asked for on this last one, they actually had to get the entire departments fired up to answer that one in a pretty short span of time, to be able to get the drafts done, verify the information, make sure it was releasable, get it to the town manager review, and then get it to us for our meeting. And that was a pretty short response, like, I want this by next meeting. And I blame myself. I went along with it, I put it on the agenda, and I likely should have said, no, we're gonna put this on 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now. We're gonna give the time to work it up. And I think that's what Stephen was trying to
Excuse me.
allude to, is that the quick turnaround, because this, you can see that the work that went into this, it's a pretty good amount of research that was in, and it's good research when it's done.
And it's an important issue.
And it's an important issue, but I guess it was like, Paul, what have I got to do Monday? I'll find out at the Monday night meeting. And that's, I guess that's where it went.
Yeah, I think, Richard, sorry, Murray. I think to your point, it only takes a second to say, I'd like this for the next meeting. But then it takes some number of people dropping everything they're already doing occasionally to get it done. And I guess what I would like is perhaps, like I said, and I don't want this to be taken the wrong way. I'm not saying that we didn't want to do we didn't want to prepare the information you asked for. We don't feel like we should answer questions. It's got nothing to do with that. I'm just raising it as a concern that I can see. I can project a scenario where we can't meet deadlines because of, if we had too many individual board demands, if in a given, saying, and they all said, well, we want for the next meeting. I just want to raise it as a concern that there may be a time where I come back and say, we just can't get it done for the next meeting. Can we have a dialogue about what can give? That's all.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, Richard, I see the responsibilities as the chair to set the agenda and serve where necessary as a liaison between the town manager and the select board members, although in this case, I'd rather see the town manager talk directly to select board members. I think that, I know this information was all put together, but I suspect if people had gotten back to Alex and, Alex, this is something we want to do, and it's going to take a lot longer than we thought, and we're not stonewalling you, we want to do it right, and oh, by the way, without dropping things we're going to do, we can't do that. I don't know what Alex's response would be, but most people would have said, yeah, as long as you're not dropping it, we want to get it done fairly quickly, let's not let it drag. But, so I think there's got to be a give and take, and that's what we've lacked here, is the give and take of what we're doing. I mean, I got to tell you, I read a lot of this information that was provided, and I have no idea what the intent was of the original, or the outcome that was intended of the original request. But when I read the information, my take on it is the town seems to be doing an awful lot about the opioid issue, that we're on top of it, what it is, between our EMTs and fire department, police department, we know what's going on, that there has not been a dramatic increase in overdose cases in the town of Longmeadow going back many years. And so I think if somebody had come back to me and said that, I said, you know what, although it's a Commonwealth crisis, it's not a Longmeadow crisis, and to wait 2 more weeks, the world's not going to end. And we'll get some information right. So I think that, Stephen, there's got to be communication on stuff like this. I mean, we're going to be doing things like saying, we'd like some information and how soon can we get it? And obviously, yesterday is better than tomorrow. And you've got to be able to come back to us and say, yeah, here's what we want. And there are going to be instances where, we don't feel comfortable saying tomorrow's good enough. It needs to be yesterday. And we can point to some past experiences and past issues where that kind of tipped over. But, I just believe that the communication has been has been an issue here, and this is an indication of that we aren't able to come back and say, we can't drop everything because somebody wants to know the water rates or somebody wants to know the opioid overdoses.
Okay. Thank
For what
you.
it's worth, I did send that message to Alex,
Okay.
just to give him a heads up.
I'm sorry,
We were
what
gonna-
message?
Just, I think the idea
Actually-
that.
Wait, hold
Could
on.
you- I'm not sure what you were referring to.
I sent a message saying, but Chief Sienna was out. I thought he was on vacation, but he's out a few days sick. And I'd given you a heads up that we may have a hard time meeting the deadline for this meeting.
You did?
But we were able to do it.
Okay,
Because I agree with you. I think as long as that's okay, and
You're
everybody's
saying
okay
you
with
sent
that.
an email to me?
But,
Yeah.
and I might share for the record, Stephen did not share any distress with me until it was already done. And then we sat just chatting about it, because I was a little concerned about it too. Because I could see that we all of a sudden would have like a duty town manager that's running around doing what we wanted to do this week instead of managing the town. And I think we need to manage the requests going in, and I take blame for that myself, that I have to manage it. I'm the gatekeeper on the agenda, and it's my responsibility or my fault or whatever, that both items are there. So anyway, let's move on. Marie, do you have anything?
No, just, I think the responsibility of the chair.
Right.
And then also, every now and then, we do vote on directives. And
Right.
it's not a bad thing. I know that many people have multiple directives, especially if you see conflict. Go ahead and bring it up. That's it.
I think everybody tries to get everything that somebody wants.
Yeah.
And we have a hard time saying no. But anyway, let's move on. Stephen, you want to head up this, the opioid abuse?
Sure.
Opioid?
As we've
The
segued
opioid.
into here, there's no doubt, and I think, I don't want to speak for Captain Stankiewicz or Captain Fraser, who are here standing in for their respective chiefs who were not able to make it tonight, that opioid addiction, heroin abuse, and other drug abuse are a growing crisis, especially in the region. I think this is something, did Senator Lesser mention it when he
Yes.
was here with Representative Ashley? I think he referenced his work on task force, and then Alex mentioned a task force or a seminar of some description that he attended, where it was really laid bare what the issue is. And he followed up with some questions about, kind of what are we doing in Long Meadow, and what is the complexion of that issue here. And so, and like I said, it is such a huge issue. It is beyond a shadow of a doubt a regional crisis, and we did want to kind of pull together in a cohesive way, what does it look like here in Long Meadow, and what are we doing? And, I think to cut to the chase, the good news is that, based on the information, just from statistical information in terms of information culled from ambulance calls, as well as police statistics, Long Meadow is fortunate to not have as pronounced a problem as in the region. In fact, I think when I got done meeting with the police department, fire department, going through the information and learning more about our policing techniques as well as our ability to respond to medical issues associated with drug abuse, I quite frankly think now that Long Meadow is a model for what other communities could possibly do, because the things we're doing are really having a really positive impact on preventing a crisis from reaching here rather than responding to a crisis. So I guess that's the kind of brief introduction. I won't, unless the board wants to, I wasn't going to go into the details of the statistics. You have them all in front of you. But you can see that the numbers are really, I think, especially on a comparative basis, very low. But with that, I guess I'll turn it either over to the board for questions, or I can turn it over for further presentation to the captains. What's the will of the board?
What is the will of the board?
Let our captains speak.
Okay? We'll let our captain speak.
Well, I wasn't prepared to make a presentation. I was here to
Don't worry, John, it's
answer
only
questions
20
about
20 minutes.
the reporting.
Yeah.
20,
It's
let's
only
make it
20.
a half hour.
Yeah.
Do you want to go? Sure.
First of all, these reports are excellent.
Oh, thank you.
And I think the record has to show that. You guys put together, I don't think you could have put together a better briefing statement. because it definitely answers every question I could ever have. And I don't know if it's answered every question the board would have, but obviously, this was assembled in a pretty short period of time, so you do have the records in the background to bring this together pretty quickly, and I appreciate your response to this issue.
Although I did forget to put one other program that we're involved in.
That was so noted,
And
John.
I did fail to put that in there. And again, that came to light, but I'm sure I'll be able to share that with you
Right.
this evening, what we're doing as well.
Okay.
I wish I could take credit for the work. This is not my work. Chief Madison put this all together and gave it to me to bring tonight. So I guess I would direct your attention to the spreadsheet, page 3, where it lists the dates, the responses, and what the situation was. As you can see, most of these are involving overdose of prescription medication, not necessarily an opiate or heroin. There's a few heroines in there, but very few.
I think what's really important about these statistics is the age of those
Yes,
who succumbed to the overdoses.
there's an age associated with every response that was made, and John is right. A lot of these are senior citizens that are involved with these. And I think a lot of times what we're finding happening is the overdose is a result of a mistake, not something intentional. Somebody's supposed to take a medication at 4 o'clock. They take it at 4 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, they say, oh my goodness, I forgot to take it. I didn't take it. They take it again at 5, and they've doubled up on it.
Right.
And they can't do that.
As we go along, if there's any of the board that has questions?
I guess my question is for Alex, and that is, when you requested the information, you indicated it was kind of a call to action for the town, and I guess my question to you is, do you still feel that we need to take some different action than we're already doing within our emergency response organizations? I won't speak for the schools because we don't control the schools, but within our fire and police in terms of, obviously they're equipped with Narcan or the antidotes. The recommendation that came forward is that we leave it with the fire department since our EMTs are there at least as fast, if not faster, than the police in many cases, and there's a training issue in that, all those things. So I'm sure you read through this, Alex. Do you have any concerns or any things that you'd like us to move forward with?
I guess in reviewing, let me just clarify something. What I requested, I did not request that a document be put together. I wanted just the reports. The original materials, and I understand, you guys sort of culled it down, and this is useful. It doesn't have all the detail of each incident, which would also be useful, but so I just wanted to, at no point did I say create a document. I was just looking for the information that existed, because I know every time that, the police go do something or the fire department goes do something, they write a report on it. I guess for me, in reviewing these materials, there's sort of two issues that sort of came to the fore. One is the Narcan issue and it being with the police officers. And then the second is, what are we doing, with our investigations to try to stem, the drugs being here in the first place, or to make it, or make Long Meadow a less comfortable place for the drugs being here. So it was very useful. This was literally the first time in 2 years on the board that I've gotten information this useful about what's going on in the police department. So that was very useful. I guess that in reviewing the descriptions, it seems to, like what we call these investigations, would you call them mostly reactive? Like there's a robbery, you respond to the robbery. Somebody's charged with possession of Class B, or like one of the incidences, empty heroin bags were found and surveillance was conducted. Everything sort of in response to, a call, And I guess what comes across to me is, the very low number of investigations, and of the investigations that are there, very few are what I would call a proactive investigation. And I don't know, do you want to speak to that, Captain?
I believe that these are proactive investigations. When we initiate, like I'll give you a perfect example. The packets that are found, that was happening at the Pride Center. There were several blowouts that were found out there in the parking lot. That was brought to our attention because our officers are out there proactively engaged in the community. They go into the Pride Station to do the parking walks, and that's what happens when you do your parks and walks. People share information with you. By them sharing that information with us, we were able to set up surveillance. Over a prolonged period of time, we weren't able to curb some of the heroin that was being deposited there, but over a prolonged period of time, we were able to actually locate some individuals who were smoking marijuana, which led to a search of the car, which led to the arrest of people with crack cocaine, as well as heroin, as well as other drug paraphernalia.
This is the 2010?
I can go back to...
Because I don't see anything about that arrest that you're talking about.
The reports heroin packets
Yeah, that
in
was
the parking lot.
That was May 24th, 2010, and it just said, the description just says surveillance conducted.
Yes, it does. I don't, as a matter of fact, I don't see that one right now. I think that was further down in the following year. Number 12 on my list, that was smoking marijuana in the parking lot. So over a period of, I'll give you the, that was in the period of 2013. It was 2013. So in 2010, we were getting reports of heroin packets. Again, we conducted surveillance on several incidences. Over a period of year and a half to 2 years, we ended up making this significant drug bust of someone who was smoking marijuana, turned out to be heroin use, and as well as crack cocaine. That was on April 3rd, 2013.
April.
I don't know if that lines up with your dates in your memo. The dates on the table in the memo are different. I think that's what it was confusing.
It's in this presentation, or it's in this packet that I gave you. I don't.
I think some of the dates aren't lined up though. But I guess I want to understand what we mean by proactive investigation.
Okay.
I'm not sure I understand what that means.
Okay, so a reactive investigation is somebody calls in, you're alerted to something. Proactive drug investigation is you're trying to figure out who the bad guys are, and you're doing undercover buys. You might even do a wiretap. You execute a search warrant. This is the sort of thing that goes on, every day of the week in Springfield and Pittsfield and Holyoke and, that sort of thing. And for example, like in 2011, even of these types of investigations that you're describing, like in 2011, there was one, for the whole year. And what that tells me is either Longmeadow was the most drug-free place around, or we're not doing a lot to figure out who is dealing drugs and who's possessing drugs and who's because and I guess that's that was a little bit of a surprise to me, that so I don't know. I mean, I guess is that your? I mean, would that be your assessment that we're pretty much drug free in Longmeadow, or that it's just so difficult to detect? I guess is my question.
We don't have an inordinate amount of street dealing. Is that what you're referring to?
I'm talking about any kind of deal.
We're a suburban community, and yes, we do have dealing, and we do actively investigate those cases. Do we work with the drug task force? Absolutely. We have Lieutenant Fontaine, Detective Jerkowski. They work with the drug task force. A lot of the residents in town or people who in town purchase illicit drugs, do so outside the jurisdiction. Does it mean that there's not illegal drugs being sold? Absolutely, there is. Case in point, Converse Street, there was 4 arrests made in that drug bust there, and that investigation.
Is that on the list?
Yes. Again, sir, I don't know what list you're looking at.
Well,
It's
I'm
the
looking
one-
at your memo.
This memo? Okay,
It was in our packet. It says.
that's correct.
It says
And
April 15th, 2015, from Captain
There
John
were-
Stankiewicz.
that's correct, sir. January 15th, 2013, there was an overdose
Yep,
that resulted in the death of an individual.
I see that. one.
Okay.
Yep,
Below that, there was 4 individuals who were arrested through dealing with a lengthy investigation.
I don't know if we edited it. This is the one I think he's looking at right here.
Okay.
What are they saying?
That's the same,
It just doesn't
Yeah.
say Converse Street.
yeah, I added that in. Okay. January 15th. Yes, that's the same one. So that's January 15th, there was an overdose.
I see that, yep.
The investigation of the overdose led to an extensive investigation coupled with the Massachusetts State Police and the Drug Task Force. We were able to locate a house in our community that there was drugs being used as well as being sold there. And through that investigation, 3 individuals were arrested. One of those individuals was a 38-year-old female who was purchasing OxyContin from prescription drugs through at other CVS's and Walgreens in the surrounding areas. She was subsequently dealing in our community not only to this youth who was 18 years old, but also other individuals in the surrounding communities. There was a 45-year-old man who was arrested, and with a warrant, they searched the house, and they were able to, he was in possession of Class B, and a 21-year-old male below that was also arrested with possession of Class B. With the aid of our officers, if you go further down, and I don't have it, I don't see it right now, but there was another 21-year-old who was arrested as he was operating his motorcycle, and through a motor vehicle stop, we were able to apprehend also heroin from that individual.
Yeah, 220.
So we do have active investigations. These investigations culminate in arrests being made, and we aggressively investigate all incidents dealing with narcotics.
All incidents.
Incidents dealing with narcotics, opioids, and opiates.
Okay. I mean, like, one of the things that I see here, so for like last year, I see one thing that I would classify as being something that you could charge somebody with. That would have been on February 21st, 2014.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you know, if that one arrest is, you know, indicative of all the drug dealing that's going on in Long Meadow, you know, we obviously, you know, there's virtually no drug dealing going on in Long Meadow. There's virtually no drug use going on in Long Meadow. I mean, you know, I have trouble believing that. And so, and I understand drug investigations are hard, right? I mean, it's hard to, I mean, people don't do it, you know, in the open, you know, and I guess, you know, the question I have is, I mean, have you guys ever executed a search warrant for drugs?
Wait, can
I was
can I just jump in for a
I have my
second?
hand up first.
Yeah, yeah,
If you don't mind if
He had
I,
his hand up.
if you don't mind, I want to
Okay.
ask Ms. Stankiewicz
Well,
something.
Well, actually.
I'm sorry.
Could, I mean, I asked a question about the search warrant.
Have we ever executed a search warrant? Yes, sir. I believe I just explained to you on Converse Street, we executed a search warrant.
Okay.
And
I
we
just
arrested
didn't-
3
I didn't s-
individuals?
Yeah, I didn't see that. All I saw was arrested.
I didn't give a lengthy description of each one of
Okay.
these. If you
All right.
would like to clarify, I don't mind
Sure,
doing that.
sure.
But a lengthy description on each one of these. This is basically just a brief synopsis of the investigations we've been involved in. What I am trying to allude to in my memo here is that there is no, I guess that's what you were concerned about, is if there was an opioid issue in our community that we haven't addressed. And what I'm trying to reveal in the information I'm providing is there is an opioid issue, as with any community. Prescription medication is a huge problem. Fortunately for us, we don't have the street dealing, so it's not as an open-air market and readily apparent. But we do have opioid problems, but we seem to be controlling it because we work cohesively, collaboratively, both with the schools. We have our detectives working with other detectives in other communities. We have our officers are fully trained in drug detection, how to handle themselves in motor vehicle stops and locate illicit items. We provide training for all our officers. We also have our SRO who works with the community, with the students, faculty, and students. She routinely checks Facebook pages and searches all trends that are coming from our youth, so we'll keep abreast of that. We have our drug take-back programs, so we've been working with the Board of Health for the last 3 years. We collected over 203 pounds of prescription medication our first time out. Steve Crane and Chief Ciano have applied for a grant so we could put a drug drop box. So that's readily available in the police station. That should be coming in the next few months. And the canine unit, and again, that's something we're trying to be proactive with because we do understand there's a narcotics issue, an opioid crisis out here, and we want to stay abreast of what we may be facing. So we're utilizing those types of tools to keep current with current trends and keep those things those things at bay. So that's what we're looking to do.
Paul?
John, Captain Stankiewicz, if I could.
Sir.
First of all, thank you guys for putting that together. It was kind of eye-opening, too, to see some of the opiate issues at the older spectrum, because that wasn't something I would have thought about with someone taking medication double and, having an OD. That's not what you typically think about when you're thinking about overdosing of drugs. And as the father of a high school student, and our kids went through school together, the same age, and we know there's stuff out there. I mean, that's the reality, whether it's alcohol or whatever. The question, I guess, and what generated some of this is, we heard Senator Lesser talking about it, we heard the governor talk about it, and I've heard the district attorney talk about the opioid crisis, and I see things like investment. So the question I have, really to kind of bring it down, is when you talk about, there's different levels of investigation. When you guys see something in the schools, we have a school resource officer. What I've observed of my time on the board is that sometimes things are going through that, it's not public information, you're not going to talk about it, it's not fanfare and so forth. And I don't want to ask the question about, high school and stuff, because I know some of the answers already, but my point is, when you look at overall, when you look at the town of Long Meadow, when we talk about the opiate crisis throughout the state, and it seems like there are communities that are just getting killed with this, and I don't, no pun intended, but I mean, where people are really getting, over ODing and dying and so forth, versus what else is out there in affecting our residents, whether it's drinking or pot or whatever. Is this, and I know you're addressing it because I know you're aware of it, because I know the collaboration that goes on with other departments, and we're not in a bubble here. Is this something that you see? Is it something that is a funding source that needs to be addressed with this, or is it something that you see that we do have a major issue? Because I again, having a 17-year-old son, you hear things and learn things that. And I don't see it at the other levels of other communities in terms of the crisis that's been cited. I'm not saying it's out there, but here, is it affecting our residents to what is being reported around in different levels of the state?
I've had the opportunity to speak with police officers from our surrounding towns that are similar in size to us, and they don't see the same opioid abuse problem as your urban areas, such as your Springfield, Holyoke, and Chickadees. Also, your extremely rural areas, we're seeing a large amount of rural areas such as Vermont who are abusing these drugs and are driving down to the city of Springfield in order to sell some of those items that they're stealing from those towns, and then bringing back their drugs back up to their rural areas. So that's what we're seeing in our community. I feel very confident in saying there is no opioid crisis. Is there drug abuse? Absolutely. In every community there is, wherever you have human beings, whether it be alcohol, marijuana, or any other narcotic drug. We haven't seen the residual effects of an opioid crisis in our community, and we're keeping abreast of that by having our fingers in the community, but we will be able to respond with our community partners if need be, but we haven't seen that as of yet.
Stephen?
I just want to, I think, as I mentioned at the beginning, I do want to commend the departments for the work they're doing. It's kind of a double-edged sword, because we made the connection between the ambulance information, which would be some indicator of drug addiction or drug abuse, where you'd have a lot more calls for people who are overdosing or otherwise negatively impacted by the abuse of opioids. And so we made the connection between the ambulance data and the police data, and like I said, it painted a very, I think, positive picture about what our organization is doing to protect Longmeadow residents, both from external forces and internal forces. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword. I can see where, it's positive news that we're doing a good job managing the issue, but it can also, I think, on looking at it from a different perspective, look like we're trying to soft sell or whitewash it. But I think if that were the case, people would know. I think you'd be hearing about it a lot more. I think the board would be hearing about it a lot more, and that's why I think, the first step in this was to run the statistics, just run the numbers, and then put those numbers in context and then combine those two contexts, police and fire, together and kind of paint this comprehensive picture. And, it all generates from really positive statistics for the town. So I think I think this is very good news for the community. I don't think it means that by any stretch of the imagination we feel our job is complete or that we shouldn't be ever vigilant. But I felt as a resident of the town, I felt pretty good that the problem wasn't as pronounced as it is in other communities, and that's really fortunate. So thank you guys for your work.
The drug problems in town, as you said, aren't just based on this. There are other dimensions, whether it's alcohol use or marijuana. Are there any programs that the police department would like to get involved with and they haven't been able to put it in their budget, such as other training or other coordination with other, task force, and you just haven't had it in your budget? Because I know we talked this year and we did cut back on the public safety budget. And is there training or something out there that would help you be more effective in fighting drug issues in Longmeadow that you just haven't been able to put on your budget?
As always, when we at one time, as a former DARE officer, that's one positive role that we had in our community, and we had someone who was outreaching with both children and parents and students, both at the elementary and middle school level. Fortunately, we have an SRO at that level currently now, who is able to bridge that nexus. Unfortunately, without us having an individual or an officer who is able to work with younger people, also to work with the community, begin grassroots type programs, it's a little more challenging for us to be out there in the community. So I guess I would say additional staffing is always key in order to bring other programs. Can we do that with our current staffing? It just becomes more challenging, that's all.
It's interesting you mentioned, Dare, and the younger kids. When we see that huge percentage is 65 to 99, are there any programs that do reach out to problems with the seniors? And as you said, it sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not. And do you have community resource officers that do reach out to try to teach better handling of medications?
I don't have any
No,
resources like that.
that is something that we discussed internally about working with the COA executive director on some kind of programming functionality. So I'd say it was a
Yeah.
surprise to us, but when
Yeah.
you see it in paper, it's like, wow, that really is startling where, additional programs for drug enforcement would have better use at the adult center than at the high school. But that's what we've experienced. And so I think that is something, as we look to the future, that we want to address.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alex?
So, I guess the other thing that I wanted to talk about was the Narcan issue. And I see that the recommendation is to sort of keep things as they are. That, like I said, I was at the federal court symposium, and, we had, the head of the Franklin County Opioid Task Force, we had DA Sullivan. I mean, it was sort of an all-star team of people. And Sullivan said he said there was no excuse really not to have Narcan in the cruisers. And in fact, he put his money where his mouth is. So he's the Northwest DA. So that's Hampshire and Franklin County. He says, I use my drug forfeiture money to fund that. That's how much of a priority it is. Eric Lesser said that all first responders and school nurses should have Narcan. I noticed Attorney General Eric Holder said all first responders, including police officers. Governor Patrick, it's sort of uniform. And I understand the response. I kind of was wondering whether that response was going to be coming back. Well, the EMTs have it, so don't worry about it. But the problem is that you're talking about a very short time where somebody can overdose, because when somebody overdoses, the reason why they die is because they stop breathing. So you can't, that's obviously a very urgent thing. We've heard from Chief Madison that sometimes when our EMT units are occupied, we have to bring them in from somewhere else. So it could be a few minutes. I can share with you one experience that I had. I had to call 911. My son, he was a toddler.
Excuse me.
He went limp. It appeared that he was stopping breathing. My wife and I freaked out. And we called 911, and the first person to arrive was a police officer. And the EMTs were not far behind. But, in that amount of time that the police officer was there, that the EMT was not there, he was working. I can't even remember exactly what he was doing because I was so upset about the whole situation. I don't know if he performed CPR, whether he blew into his mouth, but I'm sure if the police officer, detected that he wasn't breathing, that's exactly what he would have been doing. He wouldn't be waiting for the EMT. Given that, time is of the essence, and that so many, authoritative people are saying all first responders should have Narcan, I don't think that's the right recommendation to sort of keep things as they are. And I understand, you say, well, it might be once a year. We recently bought a Quint truck, for that off chance that, that piece of equipment would make the difference. And I supported the Quint truck on that very basis. We spent $750,000 for the Quint truck, maybe even a little bit more, for that sort of, rare occasion where that would make all the difference, we're talking about something that might cost $60. And I understand it costs more because you got to train and you've got to replenish the supply, and it's got to be in every car. But I mean, we're talking about a very minor amount of money in the grand scheme of things. And it looks like the training would be $3,500. It would cost $700 to put them in the cruisers, $700 a year to replenish them. If we saved one life, I mean, that would be the biggest bargain, that we would have. So I guess so I'm a little surprised, we teach a police officer to render CPR when they're the first ones there. But if somebody's not breathing because they have a heroin overdose, like everybody's standing there waiting for the EMT to get there. And so, I don't know, to me, that doesn't seem like the right recommendation.
Okay. I'm going to ask that you don't answer that right now, because I think you want to go back and talk with your chief. Alex brought up a point. I don't think it needs to be answered in this room. I think that's an internal discussion that you have made in your departments. I think we can get back with the town manager and revisit the issue, and then get back with Alex on it. I think he's explained his point and his passion for the issue. And I don't think there's any disagreement. If there was a matter of a life being saved, there's no amount of money that you wouldn't throw on. That's a very small, but I'm sure that you put a lot of research on this based on your call frequencies and what you're doing. And I can't imagine that you've ever had an experience that if you'd have had it, you would have done something that you didn't immediately go get it. So, but I think we'll let that discussion come back. Stephen, you can get with your division chiefs?
I think I'll go one more and say that I think as we're in the process of filling both chief positions, this is something that during the screening process we can certainly ask potential candidates about their attitudes about Narcan and deployment of it and everything else. It's a very valid point.
Yeah, and it is not much money. But of course, you gentlemen know the town, you know the call frequencies, and you know the problem more than we will ever know. So then, I have to yield a decision to be made by the professionals we've hired to run the department. So I appreciate you gentlemen both coming in. By the way, we didn't get to talk with fire rescue too much. We understand that you're the enforcement arm and you're the rescue part, and you guys do give the shots.
We do.
And I guess every person in your department that responds is capable of giving the shots, and you have it in a lot of different command vehicles. So there's not an absolute vacuum in our community for this protection. It's pretty widespread.
Yeah, we've had Narcan for a number of years, probably going back to 2000 when we made the upgrade to the paramedic level service. So it's nothing new to us.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate both you gentlemen coming in. Now we're going on to lease versus buy. Mike?
Well, let me start in on this one. And he's not here tonight, but I would say it was kind of a baptism by fire for our new assistant director, Jeff McGallman, who prepared the information. We didn't waste a short timer's effort on it. But I think, the point was raised during the budget discussion about lease versus buy, the large dump truck and the backhoe. And that kind of prompted a sort of broader discussion. But with the advanced timeline, we kind of narrowed the focus again. It was more, can we develop a system of leasing versus buying for multiple pieces of equipment? And we were going to look at hours on the equipment during times of the year and kind of do this whole cost-benefit analysis just as an ongoing system. But then we decided, the question really was, and I went back and looked at the meeting, the question was, can we lease this one truck and this one backhoe? And the answer to that is yes, we can. What the impact of that is on the operations, the impact of the cost is, before you, it would obviously be substantially less money for the truck. And the recommendation is that it's not a bad idea to do that. And I guess we'll call it a trial, because you would not have to, as the memo lays out, you can lease a large dump truck, but since you're only leasing it, it's going to be under warranty for the entire time you have it for the kind of I think when we said we said 6 months.
For maintenance expense, we were looking at it for, I think, 4.5 months.
Yeah, I forget the number of weeks, but
20
yeah,
weeks,
sorry,
I
20
believe.
weeks. So a 20-week lease, and so right now we buy our trucks, we buy them extra heavy duty because we intend to have them 10 plus years. But you would not have to spec out the lease of a truck that heavy duty, and you'd save some money. The problem with that would be you'd have reduced capacity, especially in the salting. It's 25% smaller, the spreader, or the container for the spreader. And so would that mean that you'd have to come back 25% more often to the shop to reload? And we don't know that until we kind of go through this trial, but we did think it was worth doing because the cost savings is substantial. And, you know, as we've noted before, we don't use the larger dump trucks as often in the summer. And so could we, and the one that really we're replacing is barely usable now. So I think that's so the answer to the dump truck is yes, it's a good idea, let's try it out. The leasing of the backhoe, the recommendation was to not do that. The big reason is the backhoes get used year-round. The annual lease for that was about $24,500, and that's really only about a third of the cost to purchase the equipment. And if we get 12 years out of a backhoe like we have, that really doesn't make financial sense. So the recommendation was to not lease the backhoe, was to purchase the backhoe outright. When we got into the discussion of leasing versus buying, one of the things we've talked about in the past internally is the need for, I'll call it a mini excavator, but it's not like a little tiny one you can rent at Home Depot. It's larger than that, but it's not a...
It's not a mini excavator. The Mercury report suggested getting a mini excavator
Right.
to replace the backhoe that's currently used by the grounds.
Yeah,
department.
because I question Stephen, that's not what you're talking about here.
It's not a little tiny one. It's a
No,
larger...
I don't even think you'd have mini on that.
Right, no, I think it's called, I think it's compared to like a giant
I think it's a
earth-moving-
mega.
Yeah.
It is heavier capacity than what we have, because with the loader that we have, with the boom, we can't get in and set, say, a sump for a catch basin or manhole for a larger excavation. So it's a larger,
Or a trench box, which is something that...
or a trench box.
You know, for our excavations, we often, if we have a larger trenching operation, we have to rent an excavator to set the large trench box.
Right.
And so we thought, well, if we're going to be in the leasing equipment mode, we should look at doing the mini excavator as well, and the cost for just the summer season.
Quit calling it mini.
No, the excavator.
Yeah.
So to lease the excavator, it would be for the 12-week period for the summer season, and we could probably use it more than that, but we just tried to kind of keep it confined. That's about $8,000, and we feel that if we're going to lease the truck and save a significant amount of money, you know, the truck lease I think was $16,000 for the the $16,200 for the 20 weeks versus $160,000 and change for the purchase. That we would recommend spending the additional $8,000 for the excavator. So we would purchase the backhoe as approved under the budget and capital plan, and then lease the one dump truck and the excavator for a total of about $25,000.
I thought it was 20. Maybe it was 25. You ready for questions?
Yes.
Oh, boy, they're all coming up. Go ahead, Marie, you're at the end of the line.
The excavator, was that on the capital planning
It's
list?
not. It's something.
So is how we procedurally going to pull that off at town meeting? I guess that's my question.
Well, we can. I think if we have funds in our budget, and we do lease. We have equipment leasing.
We do have, it's a minimal amount, it's $5,000.
We do.
in
We
our
do
operating
occasionally
budget.
lease equipment, but you could just amend the budget line item to increase the equipment leasing line item by $8,000.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Can I just follow up on
Yeah.
that, Marie? So I guess I see the excavator as a totally separate issue. The question is, why weren't we doing it already? Why, you know, is it because we didn't realize that we could do that? And
No,
and more importantly, when we spend this $8,000 on the lease, I assume we're doing it to save money. And the question is, save money relative to what other line item? You know, because if we're going to use it to do work we do now, how do we do the work? And I thought what I read in here is generally we'd go out and hire a contractor to do stuff, but now because we have the excavator or would have this excavator, we'd be able to do these things internally with our own workforce. And if that's the case, is this $8,000 lease actually a cost savings rather than an additional expense? I guess that's where I'm going with this question.
Cost saving, and, well, I don't want to speak for Mike, but the way we talked was cost savings and capacity, expanded capacity to do tasks.
But again, right, expanded capacity to do but it's not doing tasks we wouldn't otherwise do. It's doing tasks that are being done apparently some other way now, right?
In the past, we have leased larger equipment, rented for a week at a time, rented an excavator to do the work. Or we have contracted with a contractor to do the work because we didn't have the equipment. And it's not a measure of saving money, it's getting it done expeditiously and safely for the people. We have some smaller trench boxes, aluminum trench boxes, but they're not good sometimes for the depth that we have to go, for the size of the excavation. And the equipment we have can't even set the trench box in place, never mind dig deep enough to do
Right, so when we do
repair.
that now, how would you do that, Mike? You'd either lease for a day or 2 days an excavator, or you'd hire a contractor to do it.
Do it for a week or hire a contractor.
Right,
And
so
that's what we have done in the past.
So we're going to avoid those costs by taking on this longer-term lease.
And it gives us the ability to do things in a timely manner. You can't always get an excavator at the drop of a hat. So if we have an excavator for a summer season, we will be able to plan our work, do the deeper excavations where we need to get them done, and get them done in a timely manner.
I guess my point, Stephen, is that I see this $8,000 as a trade-off between this spending it this way or spending it some other way, and we may need to, and I guess we don't even need to do that, but you may need to shift some line item expenditures, but I'm surprised that this is, when I read this, that it would be additional funding. That's my take on it.
Well, it's if we're offsetting 160,000, 168,000, whatever has been approved, we can take it out.
No, I'm just saying
The bottom line question is, what are we spending now? And I think that's what you were asking, to do the same task that this would do for $8,000
or tasks, that's right, and so if it's short-term leases, if it's hiring contractors out of projects, out of project costs, but I don't know what it is. All I'm saying is that if truly it gives us that flexibility, I think it's an internal decision to make that lease and not a part of this lease versus buy.
Sorry, it's just, like we said, the leasing thing is new, it's a trial
Right.
basis. We didn't get to the level of depth on what you're talking about, Mark, because
Okay. Fine,
timeline kept moving up. That had an impact on the level of depth we were able to get to. And so
Right.
we're throwing it in is because it's an experiment. We haven't done this before. We can't really predict what the outcome on the operations is going to be. So we're saying if we're going to try it for the truck, it may be worth trying it for the excavator as well. We don't have to do it.
No, I think what Mark's saying is not so much don't do it, but he's thinking, trying to measure ahead of time. I think it's a trial, so afterwards, it'd be nice to have a report in a year saying, okay, we spent $8,000 on the excavator, this is what we were able to save on contracting out, this is what we were able to save in not leasing other equipment, so we can actually see a performance-based value in the 8,000. I'm not sure if we can really cut from the other part of the budget because we don't know if it's going to be a
Well, if we turn
successful
back at the end of the
project.
year.
But it would be nice to have it measured so we would know what happened with it.
I guess from a practical point of view, I guess the question is then, in terms of the overall town budget, if we accepted this recommendation, we'd reduce our capital expenditures by $162,300 and increase our DPW lease line item by $16,200, or you're suggesting $24,200 to cover both of these. That's
Essentially, yeah.
We're going to talk down this way now? You guys through? It never got back down this
Till we
far.
jump back in.
Good. I'm surprised the savings aren't better than the 16,000, because that, you put it out 12 years, that's the price of a new truck anyway. I was a little surprised that they want that much money. That's it.
We actually, first we started with the vendor that was
Right.
mentioned up at the MMA,
Right.
and then we weren't getting information back from them in a timely manner, so we started looking around other places, and we found another contractor who can get it based on the National Joint Powers Alliance
Yeah.
contracted prices. These are national prices. It's
Right,
an
right.
outfit based out of Texas.
But I was just a little surprised, Mike, because it actually does, if you run it out 12 years, it equals, it's more than the cost of a new truck.
It
Because it runs out about $194,000 for the 12 years.
But the difference is you don't have maintenance, you don't have repairs.
You don't have some of that, but I'm still, there's not a, and plus the fact you only have it for like a very limited amount of the season. I was expecting some fairly major savings.
Again, when we priced it out, you get a price for the truck, price
Right.
for the plow, price for the material spreader,
Right.
and you add it all up, and again, the first vendor we looked at was, I think, $4,300 or $4,400 a month.
Right.
And then we shopped around and saved $1,100 a month off of that, but that's a price for
Okay. I guess what I'm
30,000
saying, at the
GVW
end of 100 years, we wouldn't have saved a penny. We would have spent all the same money we're going to put on a truck.
That's true.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you're mitigating, you're not considering maintenance costs, tires, things like
Yeah,
that. You're not-
Yeah, I'm going to consider it. But I'm also considering, Paul, this is for a very short period of time during the year.
understand.
This is a very short period. It's to say, I'm just surprised it wasn't a little cheaper. It's not a, it's an
We can
attractive.
shop around some more.
Yeah.
This
Well,
is what
It's an
we're-
attractive option for staggering your fleet purchases. I see real benefits there, that if you needed to get those trucks out of stagger,
Yes.
that you rent one in for 1 year, so you change that stagger for long-term fleet management. But I think it's a flip of a coin. You know, it depends on what it turned out. You know, I mean, Paul, I agree with your point, but I don't have the stats in front of me to say what the maintenance is per truck per year or any of that. So, but I understand your point. It's very extremely valid because, well, there could be some extra charges here too, isn't there, Mike?
If something breaks down, to our understanding, and again, we're going through this the first time, and that this was a compressed time frame for this, but depending on what breaks, and
Right.
if there's a fender that gets pushed in, that's certainly not a warranty
That's
item.
not a warranty item.
Stuff under the hood, it may be that we would perform the maintenance, and the vendor would supply the part. That way, they are confident that
Right.
they have all original equipment.
The one question you had on the backhoe, of course, first question comes to my mind is you've got three of them, and we normally don't use three backhoes 8 hours a day, 365 days a year, or 260 work days a year. So then this was based on 12 months. So this one kind of pushed it up to where it was favoring purchasing instead of leasing. And we have a long winter season up here, so I'm sure there's a lot of time your backhoes can't get out and do anything except maybe load salt or whatever, and we've got redundancy there. That's just a point of observation.
Well, one of them has a regular plow route. The other one is used in the yard, or it's used at the recycling center.
Right.
The older one doesn't get used all the
Well,
time.
that's your big loader, though, isn't it, Mike?
No, the backhoes, a lot of times.
Okay, I thought you used your big loader.
Sometimes a loader, sometimes a backhoe.
Yeah, 'cause I've seen the big loader used, I bet. Okay.
We've used both.
Just an observation point, because, you know, you and I have had discussions before about having three backhoes.
Actually, the third backhoe belongs to the grounds department.
Uh-huh.
It's been there. It's the oldest one that we have. It's the smallest machine that we have.
And I bet you haven't put 10 hours on it last year.
The backhoe?
Yeah, that one.
Oh, certainly.
That one.
The backhoe
I know you
has.
put it on the new one.
No, I'm talking about the backhoe at the grounds department.
Yeah, because the guys
because
love to migrate to a new one, don't they?
When you buy a new car at your
They
house,
love it.
which one do you drive? The old one or the new one?
I take my car because I'm always gets the new cars. The other thing, Marie, we was talking about on the purchase of or bringing in the loader, you have to, for a trial, you have to include, there's a $12,000 trailer we're going to have to buy to move this thing around. So there is more to that. And in all honesty, I agree with Mark. I would really like to have an idea of just how much you do spend. I understand the convenience of having your own.
Okay.
But what is the actual savings, Stephen? Is it really something that we do, or is it
Keep
something?
looking at it.
Yeah. Not a major issue. It's, you should have.
Actually, just rather than buy
Mm-hmm.
the whether we were going to buy it or rent it, we are looking at a rubber-tired vehicle,
Right.
like a drop, rather than get a 12,000-pound trailer that we would need to move,
Right.
a $12,000 trailer to move the equipment around.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small enough town that if we have, whether we're driving a loader or a rubber-tired excavator,
Right.
it's going to get there just as quick.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're talking about a rubber excavator, rubber-tired excavator?
Yes.
Okay, you're not talking about a tractor, okay.
Similar to something like a drop, just because it's a small town and we could take it back and
Right,
forth.
right. So your equipment is just undersized for putting your stuff in now? The latest backhoe you got won't lift your boxes in and out?
No. It wasn't, it's not an excavator, it's a backhoe.
Well, I understand, but
It doesn't
not...
have the lifting capacity.
Yeah.
Again, we do have some aluminum trench boxes
Right.
that we can set.
Yeah.
It's more, if
No,
you-
I'm not arguing, Mike. I understand. The big trench boxes, they're heavy.
the big trench
They're big.
boxes are steel, and the precast structures.
Are we doing much of the big trench boxes ourselves, or is that mostly contract,
It's
Mike?
mostly contractors,
Yeah.
but, when there are things that come up that we should have something on site.
Right, because we normally don't get involved in that major trench box
When we
stuff.
have done, when we've needed them, we've rented them along with
Yeah.
an excavator.
I won't take any more of your time, but anyway, that's all I had, Paul.
Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate, I'd like to see what the cost is right now that we're spending on renting or leasing equipment to work on the trenches. And the other question is, there's 3 active backhoes that you have at DPW, correct, throughout? You just
3.
mentioned 3. And this isn't going to replace the grounds maintenance one.
If we were to get a mini excavator, the Mercury report, the recommendation is when that machine gets replaced, or when we get a mini excavator to replace the grounds department backhoe. So what we're talking about is renting something for the highway department, because they're the ones that are doing the deeper excavations, looking for moving the trench boxes or sumps for catch basins or manholes.
Yeah, it could be a good start.
And I don't know if we have this matrix, if we are maintaining this matrix current, but if we do, I'd like to get an updated copy, because this is probably a few years old now. And I know things have
Okay.
already been replaced. I don't know if we have.
I know he has
matrix.
one up to date.
Richard?
Yes, excuse me, Alex, you're the last in line.
I guess I was not surprised by the numbers of the lease versus buy, because it seems to me that you're hedging, it's one thing to have a 10-year-old car, it's another thing to have a 1-year-old car. That 10-year-old car or truck is more likely to break down, it's more likely to have a catastrophic breakdown that's going to cost a ton of money. So, with leasing, if the engine gets fried, that's somebody else's problem, it's not yours. So, I don't know, the leasing versus buying, I think it's definitely worth a try. I mean, the worst thing off, we're $16,000, to the poorer, whereas, you make a bad purchase of a $162,000 truck. I mean, that's a really bad decision.
Yeah, I think you missed the discussion. It wasn't so much that, it's that the leasing is a very viable thing. I was just surprised that the lease was going to be that much. I thought it'd be a little cheaper. Because when I was leasing equipment, it was a hell of a lot cheaper.
But were you leasing it for part of a year, or were you leasing all?
Yeah, just for winter season. Yeah, I mean, this is...
Unless through the federal government, you had some.
Yeah, could have been. We had better
with the
pricing.
pricing that you had.
Yeah, could have been, because I was a little bit surprised how high it was. But anyway, that's just a secondary discussion. Yeah, all the points around this are valid, but it is an excellent fleet staggering tool, though.
Absolutely.
Boy, it's just what you need a lot of times, just to stagger that fleet out, because you've been hit with some pretty major purchases, like 2 trucks in 1 year, and that hurts.
We did, when we first got started.
Yeah.
When I first got started 10 years ago,
Because that would have
9.5
kicked the can
years
down the
ago.
road very nicely to have allowed the equipment program to get up to speed. Okay, Marie?
I just hope by the end of the season, because we're talking 4 or 5 months that we'll have these, we will be able to have a report to say how many hours it was used and your analysis of what cost, maybe there was a bumper
Absolutely.
hit and things, and we just didn't expect a certain cost on it to see if we need to
I will pass the
expand it.
message along.
I would,
For you to say, right?
I would almost, yeah, Mike's not going to be here. I would almost have to believe, you know, that I don't think we should tie Mike's hands on this leasing of the one truck this year. I think they
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
well said that they want to do it. And if there's analysis work we've asked for. I mean, he's going to get his value.
Yeah.
There's no doubt, but he's got an older truck that's getting ready to give up the Ghost.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, unless the board has some strong opposition, I don't think I'd tie his hands for this year, but ask him to get the information to us.
And
Yeah.
on what? What are you, because you just took a 180, I mean, you went in.
Oh, no, I'm just talking about just the truck.
What, that they should go lease it or not lease it? I
Yeah,
mean,
you can lease for 1 year. I mean, it gives you, then tries it out and see what you're going to do anyway.
And the excavator.
Well,
I'd
the
go with
like I said, the excavator's an option. We can
Yeah.
look at that. We have some time. We can look at that a little further. Our new assistant director, Mr. McAlmond, does also have some experience in leasing equipment in previous places. And like I said, I think did a remarkable job working with Mike to pull this information together. Just, I think he's been here less than a week when we kind of threw this at him. But we can leave the excavator off. It's no worries. We can do the analysis. We can track it this year, what we lease or how much we spend on
How
renting a
often we
contract,
use
how
an
often we do it.
excavator? What they can track in the future is how often they would have used
Right.
an excavator.
It was just, hey,
for
while
an
you're talking
estimated time.
while you're on the leasing page, why don't you look at the
Right.
excavator, because we knew this was something that we could use. According to the Mercury report.
Actually, Jeff threw 2 trucks in.
Right.
Steve
Yeah.
cut it.
Yeah, I have to check the back
Steve,
piece
Stephen,
of
I
it.
guess the question I would have is, you earlier said that we kind of moved this forward a little bit more and didn't get a chance to do the in-depth analysis you would have liked to. I guess I'd like to see that in-depth analysis, because on the surface, clearly the lease versus buy sounds really like the right way to go for this plow truck. But, we're talking about a 1-year lease, and it's, the number is $16,200, purchase is $162,000. It's great that it's 1/10. But you know that the second year, through the 9th year, the 10th year, you're not going to be able to lease it for $16,200. I don't know what it is, but there's going to be some escalator on it. So the question is, what's a 10-year lease versus buy look like? And with a history of the kinds of maintenance we might expect on one of these trucks, whatever it is we do, that you throw in, best guess of people in the DPW, because I guess my question is, although at this point, as Alex said, to do this for a year, if it doesn't work out, next year we lease it and we get a truck for 10 years after that, so it really doesn't cost us a whole lot more than the inflation cost of a truck for next year. The question would be, is this really a good deal based on an overall analysis that we might be able to do? I really think that it's
He's kind of asking me.
Yeah, I know.
Let him
Yeah,
answer
but
first.
again, weren't we saying a directive from the board on whether we're asking more information from you, right?
Well, no, I think but the point is, Mark, I think we know enough now to know that there's not going to be like a clear, shining, the numbers are too close for it to be lopsided one way or the other. Okay, the question was, can you lease a truck for part of the year and would it save money? Sure.
You're going to save money in year 1, but as Richard said, over time, nobody would own a car if it was cheaper to lease a car all the time.
It's ability to pay. You lease it.
So it's your
you lease a
ability to
luxury
pay.
car. You lease a luxury car because you want to drive a luxury car and you can't afford to pay the ownership payments.
Right.
the leasing
So
company's
it's tied-
making money. If they weren't making
Right.
money on it, they wouldn't do
So
it.
it's tied to ability to pay to some extent. And we have the ability to purchase the equipment. We bring a lot of value out of them, even though we do have maintenance costs and things like that. There was the operational consideration of the larger trucks don't get used as they are used in the summer, but not as heavily. By taking one vehicle out of that rotation, you are, hastening the end of life cycle for the remaining trucks. But it didn't say no, but I'll be honest with you, if you want to do it for the money, it's gonna be not that great a deal versus, it's not gonna break down that clear where this is really a much better value, but there is, I think, going through this for 1 year, you can say, where are the cost points and the escalators, and do the escalators get offset by maintenance, but I don't think there's ever going to be a clear, there's not, I mean, even in people's private lives, leasing versus buying, I think there's rarely a clear slam dunk, other than what they want.
The communities that I spoke to said they would rather own the trucks, but if there's a difficulty with paying, instead of spending $162,000, you can spend $16,000. Over the course of 10 years, of course, that price is going to increase. So
I'll throw another thing, too, and I'll get right back. If things work out right, and if you were able to get a new DPW complex, it may not be a bad move for us to lease these trucks for 2 or 3 years.
in order
until
to...
that resolution is done, so then we bring a new truck into a brand-new thing where we got wash racks, and we can start out right instead of starting out
You could do
wrong.
that, because, you know, again, a
It's just
9-year-old
another
truck
piece.
now
Yeah,
is been exposed to the elements and
Right.
it stayed outside.
all right. Go ahead, Marie.
Well, the Finance Subcommittee brought leasing. We've been kicking this around for years. And my understanding, we was going to do one truck, we were going to lease it, we'd do analysis at the end of the year. So asking for them to give us more estimates and numbers, I mean, we really won't know the answer to this till the end of the year. And then we'll decide how leasing fits into our fleet management plan. As Richard said, it could be where we plug it in or not, but I say we give it a try, and after 1 year, we'll find out what the answers are. It won't be at this point, we're saving $162,000 this year in the borrowing costs.
And the only caveat there could be, we may end up with a 2-year lease by getting our truck back in cycle if we decide not to go that way. Because what's your order period, Mike? 8-9 months on the trucks?
About,
You see what I mean? We
between
might miss our
time of
cycle.
order and time of delivery is
Yeah.
a good 8 or 9 months.
Just procedurally, is this a competitive bid that goes out there, or is there an exemption that we can lease things without?
There are existing state contracts that we can probably lease right off of. We can also go out to bid. We'd have to talk to Chad Thompson, our procurement director, to see which way it works right.
Actually, the pricing, the cheaper pricing we got was off of a national bid, and we would have to run that through the finance department, the procurement, just to ensure it, but we've kept him into the loop.
Okay. That's just procedure. Thank you.
Any more questions? Mike, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that finishes up.
So Richard, are we going to ask the town manager to prepare amendments to the town warrant, to the town budget warrant?
Actually, that's one thing that I mentioned to Paul Pasturzek and Richard, because right now, the town warrant is to spend the 162. That's what's on the warrant.
Okay, well, I guess we'll have to make a motion on the floor then.
Yeah, I mean, you can amend it on the floor.
Yeah,
Right, but I don't think we want to wing it. I think we want to have those all
Written out.
prepared in advance.
yeah, it depends on whether whether I have to read the section or not.
Depends on what time of day.
And by the time I mentioned it to Stephen, the warrant was already
Right,
set.
yeah.
Yeah,
fine.
So
it's
that's-
already set. That's on our side of the fence, Mike.
Yeah, we can just amend it on the floor.
Stephen, you have the note so taken that, is it the unanimous flavor of the board that, do we go ahead and lease this year and try it? Or do we want more discussion on the issue?
Oh, try it.
I'm in favor of the lease.
I try it.
Okay. Okay, Stephen, so you'll do the appropriate warrant language change and all that? Okay. Okay, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we've got down, subcommittee reports. You have anything, guys?
Mr. Gold?
No, we
Any more?
had asked for some discussion, and Richard, you said we'll get it at the next meeting. A
Right.
couple of
Okay, I wasn't
proposals.
here.
One was a capital, variation of the capital expenditure plan to
I think there
try
was
to put
3 or
some
4
money
items
aside.
in there, Paul,
That
or
was-
Mark.
you're right.
Okay. no.
Yeah, it's on the,
We haven't had a meeting since the last.
right, it's on the 18th, we said the 18th, right? May 18th it's up. Yes, Marie?
And we're going to need complete streets. Alex and I have to finish working on that, but we'll need it on the agenda to a presentation on complete streets for the operations subcommittee.
Okay, if we can get on the 18th, we'll put it on the 18th, or not, we'll push it. 'Cause we got the 4th coming up. I believe there's something else besides the evaluation is already snuck onto the 4th.
Well,
Okay.
there's one in June, there's a meeting in June,
Yeah, it's
too.
June, yeah, but I was talking about trying to get to May. But the next meeting would be the 4th, and we're going to be doing Stephen's evaluation at that one.
We haven't landed it yet, but there will be, at some point in time in the near future, presentation from our consultant team on the regional dispatch center.
Oh, that's right.
And I alluded to that in my town manager's report, that'll be, I think it'd be in May. Because there's a grant cycle that we'll have to decide when to be a part of or not.
Okay. Does the board have anything else for the common good before we go back into executive session?
Scandic Valley, there's the, what is it called? The insurance, the state insurance, the
GIC?
GIC, that's it, are making some changes. And we are allowed to reflect the changes with GIC. And there could be some substantial changes coming up this summer. And our consultant is giving us an idea of what they feel it would be important for us to reflect those changes. And since we are allowed to reflect the changes without any bargaining, and we're not talking about major changes, but just a few changes could help us in savings for the residents, the employees, as well as the insurance. So I'll have more to report in a couple of months, but they're doing some very good work, and we're seeing substantial savings every single month. And East Longmeadow is moving to our model of insurance plan, which is the deductible plan,
Okay.
which will also have savings for the Scandic Valley Health Trust.
Okay. Any other business for the board?
Just a quick question, Mr. Crane. Have you've signed the contract with our new trash hauler? It is all signed.
They'll be in
Sorry.
town, I would say, in the next couple of weeks, kind of doing an orientation thing, sure.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, we were previously in session. I guess we have to vote to go back in, don't we?
I don't know if there's a need to go back to executive session.
Mark wanted to go back in,
I just thought we'd
unless
have
there's opposition to board.
a little bit more discussion about it, but
Board discussion, I guess. What's the flavor of the board?
We have a few next steps that we've identified. I'd like to see those play out before we
okay,
get too far down the path.
fine.
I have no idea, I missed it.
Yeah, you missed it.
So someone's gonna fill me in.
Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, seems like if we're going to discuss it, I mean, we could finish I don't know, I mean, I'd like to hear what Mark has in mind.
What do you think, about 10 minutes, Mark, 15
Yeah.
minutes? Yeah.
Bearing in mind, there's no lights on in there.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Well, we could actually turn off these mics, so they'll turn the mics off and we can stay right here.
Okay.
And then we're talking just about 10 minutes, so.
Yeah. I'd like to move we adjourn into executive session, not to return to open session, for the purpose of concluding our discussion on potential litigation.
Second.
All in favor? Or take a roll call?
Does it have to be carried?
Roll call, we're going back
Essentially
into executive.
Actually, I'll say no. I'm ready to go home.
Ms. Angela Vivas?
No.
Okay. Mr.
Yes.
Gold?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Foster? Mr. Santinella?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
We're only going to be in session for 10, 15 minutes. And then we're going to shut it down. So, Mark. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you watching us tonight. We'll be back in front of you on May 4th for our next town meeting, or for our next select board meeting. Have a good evening.
That's it.